Thank you so much for tuning to my show, William Wallace for America. I appreciate your time. I'm grateful that you're spending it with me. Today's show is brought to you by the Wellness Company. If you believe in your medical freedom, then please, by all means, check into the Wellness Company. Go to twc.health/WWFA. Remember that promo code WWFA gets you a nice little discount at the Wellness Company when you exercise your medical freedom with a company who believes not only in your health, but in your right to choose the path that you want to take. Like I always say, everybody, if the medical system cured everybody, they lose money. So that's why it's important for you to take it into your own hands. Today's show is a series of memes. Yes, I'm on this meme thing. I've been loving it because it brings out a lot of really good thoughts. But today I went into the meme vault. That's right. I actually have been saving memes for years, and I went ahead and went into some older memes. But even though they're older memes, I still found they have the same meaning today. So I think you're going to like what I've got to say on that. We're going to try to keep it short, if you will, on this episode. But like I said, don't forget to go visit also Patriot Mobile at patriotmobile.com/WWFA, where you get a big old discount there too. Either way, the first meme of the day here that I've pulled up. And by the way, I do try to get a thread, if you will, that kind of ties these together. And today I was listening to all the news story that's coming out about all of the corruption in Minnesota with the fraud going on with the food stamps, but the billions of dollars in fraud with the Somalis up there in Minnesota. And who would have thunk it that our politicians, while they're getting rich, are now teaching other citizens on how to get rich off of their scheme, which seems like what's happening with the elected officials up there. I could talk about this for days, but as I always like to tell you, I don't like to be distracted by the news stories. Yes, they're important. By all means, you need to know not only what's going on, but pay attention to, especially in this case, the fraud and the corruption. Politicians are getting rich in Washington, D.C. And now, while we've been told to look the other way because it's racist to say that the people in that this certain ethnicity in Minnesota would be stealing, but now the corruption is so big and so much in our face, there's no way we can turn the other way. But guess what? Don't think for 1 minute that it's only happening there. It's happening everywhere, which is more of a reason why we need to open our eyes and pay attention. So I bring you these memes with a lot of commentary because I try to bring things up. I bring memes up that, when I look at it, I go, boom. I get a lot to think about. I get a lot to say as I'm reading it. Now, I will tell you, some memes go in the trash, in the, how shall we say, in the memory hole. They'll go into, I have a little folder of memes that are done. So you're right, not all of them make it into this show. My first meme for today is when fishing without a license is more criminal than being an illegal alien, it's time to replace the government. Now, while that sounds real conspiratorial and sounds inflammatory to replace the government, I always tell people if we just not only got more people to pay attention and get more involved to vote, we can replace the government peacefully. But that's not why I brought this meme up. When fishing without a license is more criminal than being an illegal alien, everybody wants to give all the illegal aliens a pass. Well, ICE shouldn't be picking them up because, they just want to be citizens of the United States. If they're here illegally, then they are breaking our laws. And when more American citizens get in trouble because of bureaucratic red tape, all the laws, administrative laws that go through or come out of bureaucracies and agencies like fishing license, and when you break that law, more American citizens are going to jail over laws from our bureaucratic system in administrative cases than these illegal aliens are. So of course, it's why America is getting so fired up, because everybody's, oh, we'll do all this ICE rounding up people. Isn't that horrible? And the Democrats are, oh, this is so horrible that they're rounding up all these illegal immigrants. Well, guess what? One, they're illegal. And I know this is common sense, and I know it's repetitive, and I know it's something we hear every day. I get it. I know that's repetitive in itself. But the reality is that we have more laws from the bureaucratic system, from our states, and from our federal system that is putting more Americans in law for breaking simple little laws, but they're turning a blind eye to the immigration system. Now, I will tell you, as I've said before, a lot of that is because our politicians don't want to fix it because they benefit from it. The next meme up here for the day is, it shows a game board, like a Monopoly board, and it's sitting on people that are underneath it, and they're bent over, so it's on their backs, so to speak. And then around the game board, you have a lot of, very influential looking people. And it says, if the people stand, the game is over. So if they stand up in this picture, the game board falls over. It's like I've been saying, and you can't repeat this enough. I can't repeat this enough. When people start getting out and getting involved and voting, the game is over. If we start demanding our elected officials do the right thing or we vote them out, game over. We don't. And as a result, we have people like Ilhan Omar, who's worth $30 million after just a few years in office, when she was dead broke with her husband and brother before she ran for office. We have more power than we realize, and that is why they put so many laws in the bureaucratic system, because it keeps us under the game board. In my next meme, it says, it actually is a piece of white paper with blue writing on it. It says, if you allow the government to break the law for an emergency, they will create emergencies to break the law. Hence the reason we got the Patriot Act. Hence the reason that we have so many elected officials getting rich while breaking the law, because we've allowed them to. We've allowed our own government officials to break laws within the system, which is why they're getting rich. And because they've created the laws, they get away with it. So as a result, I'm taking a COVID meme, of course, and stretching it a little bit because it brings a lot of things to my mind. But of course, they will create emergencies to break the law. They don't need to in this case. They're creating the laws. They create the narratives, which get them all the support they need from the media and from all the people on their side to give them cover while they break the law and give them a pass when they do so. And that's what happens when we allow them to not only create the narratives and force us to eat them and live by them, and as a result, they get away with the laws that they're breaking themselves. I got a picture up here of Patriot Mobile. Don't forget about Patriot Mobile. When you want to switch your cell phone service to them, at patriotmobile.com/WWFA. In the that is next. This is actually quite interesting. Um, as you know, I try, I always say that I don't want to go into the conspiracy um, stories, if you will, or repeating the narratives of certain conspiracies. Although I think they're very important to cover them, I try to cover them in a slightly different way. This meme is just a bunch of it looks like old speak. It looks like a bunch of writing on an old parchment paper, but it says, if you're not watching the video and you listen to the podcast, you need to hear it. It didn't start with gas chambers. It started with one party controlling the media, the party controlling the message, one party deciding what is truth, one party censoring speech and silencing opposition, one party dividing citizens into us and them, and calling on their supporters to harass them. It started when good people turned a blind eye and let things happen. You know, a lot of people now are saying, well, Trump is Hitler, and you see it's one party controlling the media. Well, actually, I think the Democrats still control the media because they've done it through the narratives. They've made you feel guilty if you believe a certain way or if you don't toe the line another way, which has already given them power without politicians, by the way. Some people are like, well, you see, Trump is trying to take away this and do that. Look, I certainly don't think that he is going to be the beginning of some sort of Hitler-esque, which is what some people are fearing, type takeover. I called him out when he said that he wanted to revoke the license of what ABC or CBS, whichever one it was, because he didn't like the coverage they gave him. And I called him out on that because I think anything that you say against the Second Amendment, whether you do it or not, just saying it, as I explained in the last podcast, is bad enough. You don't want to speak out against the Second Amendment. You don't want to say something that is anti-Second Amendment at all whatsoever, because they're not only going to use it against you, they're going to use it against future people running as a Republican in office. Either way, I don't think we're here. That's not where I think we are. But I think that the silence is what leads to that. I think that in our world that we are today, we are so advanced with social media and all the different outlets that we have that we can actually not, or a dictator or a would-be dictator would not be able to cover up what they're doing. However, our bureaucratic agencies get to take more control when we're not paying attention or when we're being submissive or when we're not speaking out, as do our politicians, which makes this statement, while I think it's outdated, relevant today if we continue to turn a blind eye. In my next meme, I thought this is interesting. It says, and I'm gonna make it bigger if you're on the video. I'm down in the bottom corner if you're watching. It basically says, Happy Banned Books Weeks. Happy Banned Books Week. These are the most banned books from public libraries and schools in the U.S. I thought it was relevant because there was a big argument a while back where Democrats, wanted to blame Republicans for trying to take away their, the First Amendment rights or the freedom of speech. They were, the Republicans are just trying to ban books. Why? Because the Republicans did not want books that taught children sex acts or that taught children sexual practices, because a lot of those books are in libraries or school libraries where children have access to them. So Republican-minded people, and there are even some Democrats on this side of the issue, simply did not want children to have access to books that involved sexuality. Of course, the Democrats made the narrative that that was banning of books and a violation of the First Amendment rights. However, we now go back in time a little bit. If you remember right, we had a period of time where they were taking out books that were more conservative minded, and also they were trying to get books that simply maybe made some references to how shall we say this, to things that they stood against. Of course, books that might have had anything in it about race or anti-gender type situations or narratives. Maybe some of those books were um that they I guess in their opinion promoted racism. However, they still got them taken out. So they themselves created this problem way before they did recently, because now they, at that time, they wanted certain these books taken out. Now in the video, you'll see To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, Catcher in the Rye, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. These are all books. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. These are all books that the Democrats wanted taken out of the public school system, again, because they did not fit their narratives, because they actually, in their opinion, maybe promoted racism, not because it was a book about racism or promoting racism, but just simply because it didn't fit their narratives. And today, when they switch sides and they're fighting against people who want to have pornographic books taken out of the library that are in children's sections, all of a sudden that's a violation of the First Amendment right. There's a big difference here. These books are literature. The books that they tried to get taken out a way back, they weren't Republican minded books. They weren't conservative minded books. They were just simply literature that did not fit their narrative. So when they wanted to take it out, it was to bring unity. Now they're fighting to keep pornography in children's libraries at children's schools where they have full access to them. Big difference here, but I just thought we'd go back in the time machine a little bit to say, look, Democrats started this. So doesn't matter who started it. Does it just mean that, hey, you know what? There is a line that should not be crossed, and maybe their line is, how shall we say, does not have a lot of footing, does not have a lot of reasoning to remove those books, simply not fitting the narrative. Whereas the Republicans wanted books removed that promoted sexual practices amongst children and underage children that would not normally be able to go into a store and buy anything pornographic anyway, because they are in lower grades. Big difference here. Just thought it'd be interesting to bring it up. This next meme up here is it's a little green picture with a green background. It says, when a wild animal in the wilderness calls out a warning, the others don't question their motive, as their instincts are still intact. When a human tries to warn his kind, they laugh and call him a conspiracy theorist because their instincts have been rendered useless. What I thought was interesting about this particular meme is that, well, at face value, it's actually very, very accurate that today, when people start yelling facts or they start offering other information in the on the soapbox, everybody calls them a conspiracy theorist. And I always hate to use the expression that there's 6 months between a conspiracy and fact. However, I'm always saying to people, in today's world, stranger things have been true. Stranger things have made sense. But yet the narratives outweigh the facts. If the narratives become more popular because of the media or because they have closely tied a narrative with an insult, like, if you don't believe this, you're racist, you're a homophobe, Well, as a result, they've created people who are much more likely to adhere to a narrative than a fact. And their best way to fight the facts is by simply calling the other person a conspiracy theorist. Whether there's a truth behind the 6-month rule or not, which in some cases there is, just the fact that we're finding today that stranger things are truths is more of a reason to get a lot of information out there and investigate it to be able to find the truth, to beat the narratives, and be able to promote your instinct. Because one of the best ways to figure out whether it's a narrative or not is to trust your instinct. And if they take that instinct away, just like they've been trying to take away our work ethic in America, if they take away your instinct, because what they've done is they've controlled your First Amendment right by simply making you feel guilty to think a certain way or believe a certain thing or to be able to investigate a certain thing. And when they make you question yourself and question your own instinct, they take away your ability to use your instinct and your gut feeling to find the truth. People often ask me, where do you get the most truth from? Or where do you get the most information from? I read a lot of information. I scour a lot of articles. And quite bluntly, to put it that way, it's your gut. It's your instinct. You can read something and pretty much realize whether it's truthful or not. I get it. There's some facts that you might deny initially, but when you read through stuff and you're aware and you're constantly reading through stuff, your instincts will tell you whether it's right or wrong, whether it's something that you need to investigate further, whether it's enough information or not. But because the political powers in this world, because the narratives in the media have been so successful, they have been able to take away our instincts as human beings, as thinking, critical thinking, particularly human beings, to be able to figure out on our own whether it's a conspiracy, fact, or a narrative. In my next meme, it says from top to bottom, shows a picture of a guy holding a lantern in the air, and it says, first we overlook evil, then we permit evil, then we legalize evil, then we celebrate evil, then we persecute those who still call it evil. Woe unto them who call evil good and good evil. That's Isaiah 5:20. First, we overlook evil because, you know, sometimes our hatred for the other side or the other narrative or the other person or the other set of beliefs is so great that we overlook the evils that might counteract it. Because, like people who have such hatred for Trump, they'll look over the evils of their own side, like Elon Omar, who's committing a crime, because she's fighting Donald Trump. So they'll get behind her and overlook her evil because the boogeyman is a bigger evil. Then we permit evil. Well, right now, members of Congress are breaking so many laws and getting rich off of it. And you know what? Let's sidestep for a second. Maybe they're not breaking any laws, right? Maybe they're just wink, wink. They just are smart enough with the information that they get, right? No, the fact is a lot of elected officials, bureaucrats, etc., people in power are getting away with evil because we're permitting it. We're permitting it by not voting them out, by keeping them in office because we'd rather a Democrat, in the case of Elon Omar, who's committing a crime than a Republican getting in there and changing the balance of power. Oh my gosh. Then we legalize evil. You know, we look at our bureaucratic system, look through our laws and regulations, and maybe they're not legalizing evil in itself, but maybe they're legalizing things that are evil to freedom. Then we celebrate evil. You look at the case of this black guy that is the one that is permitted that planted the pipe bomb, and we look at it's not a celebration, but the fact that he's gotten away with it for so long, and they're just now finding out about it in this administration. It's not a public celebration of evil, but it's more like the other side is celebrating that they got away with it for so long. But let's go on to what's his name? The guy that shot the healthcare worker, the president of the healthcare company. Was it Humana? I think it was. Mangione, whatever his name is. Everybody's celebrating his evil that he killed somebody. Everybody's celebrating Luigi. That's Luigi Mangione, whatever his name is. You got it. There are people celebrating his evil because he killed the president of a healthcare company that was denying people healthcare benefits. I said this in a Facebook post today. Somebody pointed out that, people in Europe are healthier because they get free healthcare from, cradle to grave, basically, because it's paid for by the government. And I made the point that Europeans are healthier because they don't allow processed foods in their food system. They have healthier lifestyles, and they also buy fresh food almost daily. How does that have to do anything with this? It's a little bit of a stretch, but the fact that we give a pass to our healthcare system in America and we celebrate, like many people are celebrating, when a healthcare worker, when the president of a healthcare company gets killed, if we simply demanded a better system from our own government and our own elected officials, we could take the power away from those who would celebrate the death of somebody just because they're going against their beliefs. And there could not be a celebration of evil as a result. Then we persecute those who still call it evil. Exactly my point I said earlier about Ilhan Omar. Everybody is celebrating her by giving her a pass because she gets on news and says, oh no, this is just not happening. Even though there's tons of proof, the people who are calling it out, as I have on social media, I have a few people that will say, you see, you are pointing out that, the only reason why that Democrat's getting in trouble is because of Donald Trump. Doesn't matter who's in office. It's illegal. And you can't persecute those who call it evil just because they're on your team. And my next meme up is it's a big stick drawing of people on the left. It says and so it has a sign that says following the narrative. And it says, you're a terrible person, they're all screaming. Meanwhile, there's a few people on the right that says analyzing the facts. Goes back to what I've been saying. We're living in a society where if you follow facts or you find other facts, it doesn't matter whether they're proven true or accurate. Just the mere fact that you are following a different set of beliefs makes you a terrible person in other people's eyes. That's how powerful these narratives have become with people. Because not only the narratives have convinced them there, but their vilification of anybody who does not toe the line of those narratives as being evil is so great that those who follow facts are seen as the terrible person. My next meme up. Oh, just another shout out for my friends at Richardson Nutritional Center, rncstore.com/WWFA to get some discounts. The next meme is a quote. It's got some drawing of some sheep underneath there. It's by Noam Chomsky. The general population doesn't know what is happening, and it doesn't even know that it doesn't know. Because I don't want to use the word narrative again, but let's go a bit further. They create a boogeyman. Different sides create boogeymen. And everybody needs a boogeyman. Society needs a bad person. So as a result, they don't know what's going on because they're so focused on the boogeyman. They're so focused on the hot topics and the boogeyman that they don't look at the facts. And another reason they don't look at the facts is because they've seen people vilified so much who try to educate themselves with additional facts, different facts, new facts. They see those people getting vilified and beaten up and destroyed in public humiliation. They see people who come out and make a stand and have a different point of view. They see them get publicly humiliated in such a way that they don't want to be educated. They don't want to research it because, whoo, did you see what happened to the last guy that thought a little bit differently and stepped out of line? They don't even know. They're kept quiet, not only through cognitive dissonance and the narratives, but through having their own thoughts taken away because they know to think otherwise, they'll be publicly humiliated. So that's why many people in our general population don't know what's happening. They've been conditioned to shut up, be quiet, and don't watch the news. My next meme, it's the Schoolhouse Rock picture of the little redheaded boy on the steps of the Capitol, got a bill sitting down. It says, "How does a bill work?" And of course, the bill is saying to the little boy in red hair, "That's an easy one, Billy. Corporations write the bills and then they bribe our elected officials until the bill passes." Which, might I add, is why elected officials are getting so wealthy in office. No, they don't get bribed. They can't get a check, right? It's got to go through campaign reports and finances and all that other stuff. Well, that's on the record stuff. The off the record stuff is how they're getting so rich with stocks. They get a tip. They don't get handed a check. They get handed a tip. Tell your broker to buy 1,000 shares of whatever stock. It's about to go up. They get rich. That's how the money moves. Untraceable as it may be, that might not be how the system works entirely with a bill getting passed, but you got the general idea. They're not representing the people. They're representing the businesses that give them the stock tips. In my next meme, it's a sign on the side of a barn. It says, "The freedoms you surrender today are the freedoms your grandchildren will never know existed." Our freedoms are being taken away in the bureaucratic system. Little bitty laws, little by little. That's how they hide the removal of our freedoms, because they're taking them away in the bureaucratic state. Little by little. They're taking them away in these ominous bills. You only know what the main subject is, that they tell you that the main subject is, but hidden in the bill is lots of other little things that are slowly taking away our freedoms, because nobody's paying attention to reading these, 2,000-page bills. So we're technically not surrendering them. We just don't have the time to pay attention. That's why we need to demand smaller bills, 1 or 2 page line items, but then the politicians know they would have to go on record as being for something or against something. And that just wouldn't be right. Right? The next meme up: always remember the crowd chose Barabbas, not because they loved Barabbas, but because they hated the truth. Jesus being the truth. Now let that sink in. It goes back to what we see today. There's so many people on the left and so many Democrats and some moderates at that dislike this president so much that they extend that hatred to anyone in his circle. So even though there might be a lot of truth in that circle, they're going to hate it because they don't like the truth. The truth is hard. Subtle lies, subtle narratives that promote something that might not be as truthful, but is easier to swallow because, those immigrants that are breaking crime, they're here legally. They're here because they love America. They want to be a part, and they clean your house and they cut your grass. They don't want the truth. They broke the law. They're stealing your jobs. They're committing crimes, many of them, not all of them. And if we continue to let them be here illegally, they're going to take over our population. And because they don't love America the way that you do, they're going to break laws because they're doing it already. They have no respect for the law. Not all of them, but many of them. And over time, there will be less respect for cultures of all kind. There'll be less respect for America, freedom, because where they come from are countries that don't promote freedom and liberty, that don't believe in the rule of law. And that's because we've allowed it. So when we allow untruthful things to happen, people are going to hate the truth because it makes them be disciplined. It makes them have to act a certain way, live a certain way, stay in a legal mindset that's good for society. It's not easy sometimes when you come from a country where it's easier to color outside the lines. Not that we need to be colored inside the lines, but simply because we need to obey the laws on the books. That's why they're there. People hate the truth because it doesn't fit their narratives. So they'd rather sacrifice the good guy. In the case of Barabbas, it was Jesus. Next meme up says, even if you're not conspiracy minded, something in your soul has to be telling you something isn't right with any of this. It's like I was telling you earlier. They have figured out through the media narratives how to make people feel guilty for thinking a certain way. If you believe in the truth, they know how to make you feel guilty. You believe in other facts, you're made to feel guilty. But in your soul, If you just pay attention to what's going on in your soul, something's going to tell you that what's going on isn't right. I could go down the conspiracy hole a lot deeper than this. There's a lot of things going on right now. There's a lot of things going on that you go, that doesn't sound right. You think of the Charlie Kirk assassin. You think of Luigi, that's his name, Luigi. You go, how's this not right? You think about the pipe bomber. You hear things on both sides. Elon Omar, Tim Waltz. You start to hear lots of other information. And when you pay attention, you don't have to be on the right or the left to see it. Something in your soul tells you. That's because our freedoms and liberties were endowed to us by our Creator. He gave us free thought, free will. He did that for a reason. And when we use our own free thought and our free will, and we block out the narratives and we block out the people telling us that we're wrong for looking at other alternatives or looking at other pieces of information or even looking at what is thought of to be as conspiracies. If we ignore that and we read it and listen to ourselves, our soul will tell us that something isn't right with any of this stuff that's going on. My mypillow.com meme is up next on here. It says if you, if you go to mypillow.com, use the promo code WWFA for some big discounts on Christmas gifts. My next meme up says, and I love this one. It's one of my last memes of this show. There are 4 groups of people right now. Those who believe the narrative and comply. That would be mostly, I think, Democrats. People on the left, they just comply. They believe the narrative and they comply. 100%. They're not free thinkers. Yes, there are people on the right that just simply believe that, this president is doing everything right. And they comply. They jump on the bandwagon and they do not resist. It's on both sides, but I think it's more on the left. Second group of people right now, those who know it's BS and comply anyway. Those are the people that I would say are the ones that have such hatred for this president, Donald Trump, or so much hatred for people that believe other sets of information. They know Elon Omar. They have so much hatred for people who are anti-illegal immigration. They have so much hatred for Donald Trump for using ICE to kick him out that they know it's BS. They just comply anyway. By the way, this meme that says there are 4 groups of people right now. It's just a black and white photo. Number 3 third group of people, those who are waking up to the lie and are starting to refuse to comply. I'm seeing more and more of these people, both from the right and the left in particular, that just are waking up that we're being lied to from many directions. And they're searching for other information. They're looking into the conspiracies because I'll sidetrack for a minute. Where there's a conspiracy, there are some truths hidden. You got to look for them. Got to lift up some different layers, go a little bit deeper. We're told that conspiracies are just conspiracies or lies. I think a little bit differently, that there are many conspiracies that are just hiding the truth. More and more people are waking up to the lie or the lies in the media, in the narrative, coming from both different political parties to try to corral their people up. And as a result, they're starting to refuse to comply to the media, the thoughts, the narratives, the mind numbing, control seeking thoughts, words, and narratives that have been able to successfully corral people for the purpose of control and theft of freedom. More and more people are waking up to it, and they're seeing it for what it is. They're searching for more truth on what they can do to protect their freedom. And the fourth group of people are those who knew it was BS right from the start and refused to partake in the lie. Those are the really good ones because they see the lies coming at them from all directions and they're not standing for it. My next meme is just some black letter in a blue background that says, imagine living the last 3 years and still not being the slightest bit suspicious. That's my point. If you're not suspicious that you might be wrong, look, I get it. I probably used to be more galvanized in my beliefs than I am today. While I have my beliefs and I'm galvanized in my basic foundations, I am still willing to look and be suspicious. I don't believe everything from the right. Certainly don't believe everything from the left. I think everything's suspicious. Sometimes I have thoughts that are even more conspiratorial minded than you might believe. Like, for instance, everybody says, well, you know, I saw the documentary on Kennedy. And of course, they deemed it as a lone shooter, Oswald. Ruby killed him, case closed. I look at that. I look at this Louise Mangione, whatever his name is, last name. And I look at the Charlie Kirk assassin. And I go, is it really what we're being told? Are those really the killers? Or are they going to replace the real killer? Or somebody said, why would some of these people spend their life in jail just to take out Charlie Kirk or to take out the healthcare CEO? Well, let's be suspicious. Let's be really conspiratorial and really suspicious. Maybe that's not who did it. Maybe it was an assassin. Maybe it was a hand for hire. And they snuck him out and they get somebody in. And then when that person or the person gets sentenced, they say, oh, well, he's going to this jail. And that person just never shows up. And they go, look, don't ever let yourself be seen again. You're going in the witness protection program. I am suspicious sometimes in ways just to simply think or force myself to think that there's other truths out there. Be aware. Look around. Be suspicious. Think things out in ways that you might make you realize, as it does me, that we got to open our eyes, that things are not always what we're told. Find your facts, research, look deeper for more facts, because I think that when you start doing that, you become a more independent, free-thinking person instead of just allowing yourself to be corralled into a certain way of thinking that puts you on one political side, hating the other side because they're different, or hating the other side because their leader is someone you were told to hate. It's a different way of thinking what I just explained, and I'm only presenting it to you that way, that maybe that might be an avenue for you to take as I've talked to a lot of people who have taken this avenue, just to get themselves out of a box, think a little bit differently, research other stuff. I'll digress on that one. And my last meme for the night is one that says, people, it has a weird image of a person with a black and white checkered outfit on. It says, people think you're crazy if you talk about things they don't understand. Of course, I timed it intentionally because, quite honestly, many of the conspiracy things that I've talked about, alluded to, or have considered thinking, I don't understand. And I myself look at it sometimes as being crazy. But right now in today's world, there's so much crazy going on that the more I look at it that way, the more I realize that things aren't always as we're told. Maybe things are very different from what we're told. And if we can go that far and think that far out, we might be able to find ourselves uniting with more people who think differently in ways that will protect our freedoms, our liberties, the future of our country, and be able to find ways to get the real truth out there. In other words, you got to uncover a lot of rocks that don't look like they have anything underneath them. You got to go down a lot of rabbit holes that might lead to nothing. You got to talk to some crazy people, listen to some crazy people. And when you start doing that and you become informed on everything, you're able to tell the difference between a fact, a conspiracy, and a narrative, and be able to protect yourselves from the people who want to control your thoughts in ways to take your freedoms and your liberties. That, my friends, finishes the show up for the day. Don't forget about my friends at the Wellness Company. Don't forget about my friends at Patriot Mobile. Remember that promo code WWFA at the Wellness Company, twc.health, patriotmobile.com/WWFA. Check them out. And thank you so much for listening in. Please share the show. I'd be thankful and grateful if you did. God bless you, and God bless America.